The wail of a baby cut through the confined space of the Uber like an alarm, making the driver flinch and glance nervously in his rearview mirror. Olivia Reyes hugged her 4-month-old daughter Lily tighter against her chest, murmuring apologies. As the infant's cries intensified, the cramped back seat suddenly felt impossibly small as the other passenger, a well-dressed stranger, shifted uncomfortably beside them. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm so sorry, Olivia whispered, her voice barely audible, over Lily's distress. We'll be getting out soon. The exhaustion in her eyes told a story of sleepless nights and endless struggle, the dark circles beneath them aging her well beyond her 24 years. The Uber driver cleared his throat. "Ma'am, maybe you could." He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable with the disruption, but unwilling to say more. Olivia's face burned with embarrassment. This rideshare had been her last resort, a splurge she couldn't afford but desperately needed after her bus pass expired yesterday. The interview at the downtown diner had gone well, but now the prospect of walking the remaining 15 blocks, home in the drizzling Seattle rain with a screaming baby, seemed unbearable. "May I?" The deep voice beside her came unexpectedly, startling Olivia from her thoughts. She turned to find the businessman studying her with kind eyes. His tailored charcoal suit and expensive watch marked him as someone from a world entirely different from her own, someone who probably had never worried about bus fare or stretching the last few dollars until payday. "I have a niece about her age," he continued, holding out his hands tentatively. "Sometimes babies just need a change of perspective." Olivia hesitated, her protective instincts flaring. She'd learned the hard way not to trust easily, especially men who showed sudden interest in her or Lily. The baby's father had demonstrated exactly how quickly someone could disappear when responsibility became inconvenient. But there was something reassuring in the stranger's gentle smile, something that didn't set off her well-honed alarm bells. And she was desperate, so tired that her arms ached from holding Lily, so exhausted that her eyes stung. "Okay," she finally whispered carefully, transferring her daughter into the man's waiting arms. What happened next seemed nothing short of miraculous. Within moments, Lily's piercing cries softened to whimpers, then to gentle coos as the stranger held her securely against his broad shoulder. His large hand moved in soothing circles across her tiny back, and he hummed a low, comforting melody that seemed to work like magic. "How did you do that?" Olivia breathed, amazed by the sudden peace. "Just a knack," he replied with a modest smile. "I'm Daniel, by the way, Daniel Chen." "Olivia, and this little miracle worker is Lily." She watched in wonder as her normally fussy daughter settled contentedly against Daniel's shoulder, her tiny eyelids already growing heavy. The Uber driver's relief was palpable as he navigated through downtown Seattle's rain-slicked streets, the tension in the car dissipating along with Lily's cries. "Where are you headed?" Daniel asked conversationally, still gently patting Lily's back. "Rainier Valley," Olivia answered, then immediately regretted it. The neighborhood wasn't the city's worst, but it was far from its best, the kind of place where people lived because it was what they could afford, not where they chose to be. If Daniel recognized the implications, he showed no sign of judgment. "Long way from downtown, job interview," Olivia nodded, surprised by his perception. "At Marlowe's diner, they need servers for the morning shift." She glanced down at her only nice outfit, a simple blue blouse and black pants, now wrinkled from the day's activities and spotted with baby formula. "And Lily, who watches her while you work?" The question wasn't intrusive, just genuinely curious, but it still touched a raw nerve. "My neighbor, Mrs. Diaz. She's retired and watches a few kids from the building. It's not ideal, but—" Olivia trailed off, not wanting to dive into the complexities of childcare costs that exceeded minimum wage earnings. Daniel nodded, understanding, more than she realized. Childcare is impossible these days. My sister nearly went back to work after having my niece because the numbers just didn't add up. As the Uber continued its journey southward, Olivia found herself relaxing for the first time in what felt like months. There was something comforting about Daniel's presence, a steady calmness that seemed to extend beyond just his effect on Lily. "So what do you do?" she asked, gesturing vaguely at his expensive suit. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face. "Business consulting mainly, helping companies run more efficiently." Olivia sensed there was more to it than that, but didn't press. Everyone had their secrets, their stories they preferred not to share with strangers in ride-shares. The rhythmic patter of rain against the windows, combined with the car's gentle movement and the first moment of peace she'd experienced all day, began to weigh on Olivia's eyelids. She fought against the exhaustion, blinking rapidly and sitting up straighter. "You can rest, you know," Daniel said softly, noticing her struggle. "I've got her." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I couldn't," Olivia protested weakly, even as her body betrayed her with a yawn. "I don't even know you." "True," he acknowledged, "but sometimes the universe puts the right strangers in our path when we need them most." Under different circumstances, Olivia might have found such a statement cheesy or suspicious, but in this moment, with her daughter sleeping peacefully in this kind stranger's arms, and her own exhaustion threatening to overtake her, it felt like a permission slip to surrender, just for a few minutes. "Just until we get to my stop," she murmured, her head gradually tilting until it rested lightly against Daniel's free shoulder. The last thing she registered before drifting off was his voice, soft and reassuring. "Rest. You're both safe." Olivia didn't know how long she had been asleep when the car's sudden stop jolted her awake. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind. Where was she? Why was she leaning against someone? Where was Lily? Then reality rushed back. The Uber, the kind stranger, her baby. She straightened immediately, a flush of embarrassment heating her cheeks as she realized she had been sleeping against Daniel's shoulder. Lily was still nestled contentedly in his arms, also asleep. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, quickly taking Lily back into her own arms. "I didn't mean to." "No apologies needed," Daniel said with a genuine smile. "You clearly needed the rest." Olivia looked out the window, surprised to see they were already outside her apartment building, a weathered 5-story walk-up with peeling paint and a security door that never quite closed properly. The rain had intensified, turning the late afternoon even darker. "This is me," she said unnecessarily, gathering her worn shoulder bag and adjusting Lily against her chest. The baby stirred, but thankfully remained asleep. As she reached for the door handle, Daniel spoke again. "Olivia, I know this might seem strange, but I'd like to help you." The words instantly raised her defenses. She'd heard variations of this offer before, usually with strings attached that became apparent. Later, "Thank you, but we're fine." "I don't mean to overstep," he said quickly, noting her change in demeanor. "It's just that I have some connections at restaurants better than Marlowe's. Places with benefits, childcare assistance, proper tips. I could make a call." Olivia studied him, trying to detect ulterior motives in his expression. Finding none, she still hesitated. "Why would you do that for someone you just met?" Daniel seemed to consider his answer carefully. "Because someone did it for my mother when I was not much older than Lily. A stranger who had no reason to help, except that they could." Something in his tone rang true, speaking to a shared understanding of struggle that transcended their obvious differences in circumstances. "I don't take charity," Olivia said, but her voice had softened. "It's not charity," Daniel replied. "It's connection. My business is all about connecting the right people to the right opportunities." Before she could respond, the Uber driver cleared his throat. "Sorry, folks, but I've got another pickup waiting." Daniel quickly reached into his wallet and handed Olivia a business card. It was simple but elegant, with just a name, phone number, and the logo of a company she didn't recognize. "Think about it," he said. "No pressure, but if you decide you want to explore some better options, call that number." Olivia slipped the card into her pocket, not committing but not refusing either. "Thank you for your help with Lily, and for letting me rest." With that, she stepped out into the rain, hurrying toward her building's entrance. At the door, some impulse made her turn back. The Uber was still idling at the curb, and through the rain-streaked window she could see Daniel watching to make sure she got inside safely. She offered a small wave, which he returned before the car pulled away into the grey Seattle afternoon. Inside her tiny one-bedroom apartment, Olivia gently placed the still-sleeping Lily in her second-hand crib and took a moment to breathe. The place was barely 500 square feet, with water stains on the ceiling and drafts that whistled through the window frames in winter. But it was clean, and it was theirs, at least for now. Her gaze drifted to the stack of bills on the kitchenette counter, topped by an eviction notice that had arrived 3 days ago. "Final warning," it proclaimed in bold red letters. Despite working every shift she could get at her previous job, she was still 2 months behind on rent. The interview at Marlowe's had been her last hope, a place known for its busy breakfast, crowd, and decent tips. Olivia pulled Daniel's business card from her pocket, running her thumb over the embossed lettering. Daniel Chen, CEO, Horizon Innovations. CEO, not just some business consultant. The realization sent a wave of embarrassment through her. She had fallen asleep on the shoulder of a company CEO while he held her fussy baby in an Uber. Still, something about their brief encounter had felt genuine. In her 24 years, Olivia had developed a finely tuned radar for people's intentions. Necessity had made her perceptive, able to distinguish between genuine kindness and the type that expected something in return. Daniel had seemed different. Her phone chimed with a text from Mrs. Diaz next door. "How did the interview go? Can bring over some soup later if you want." The older woman had been a godsend since Lily was born, offering affordable childcare and the occasional home-cooked meal. Olivia quickly texted back a grateful acceptance, knowing she needed to save what little food she had for tomorrow. As she changed into worn sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, Olivia's mind kept returning to Daniel's offer. Was it really as simple as he made it sound? A connection, an opportunity, no strings attached. Experience had taught her to be skeptical, but desperation was a powerful motivator. With the eviction looming and Lily depending on her, could she afford to turn down potential help? Before she could overthink it, Olivia picked up her phone and the business card. Just a call for information, she told herself. Nothing committed, nothing owed. She dialed the number with trembling fingers, expecting a receptionist or secretary. Instead, after 2 rings, Daniel's now familiar voice answered. "Daniel Chen." "It's Olivia," she said, suddenly unsure what to add. "From the Uber." "Olivia," he responded, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I'm glad you called. How's Lily doing?" The simple question, asked with genuine interest, eased her tension slightly. "Still sleeping, thankfully. Listen, I wanted to hear more about those restaurant connections you mentioned." "Of course," Daniel said. "Actually, I've already made a few calls. There's a new place opening in Pike Place Market, upscale, farm-to-table concept, but with a family-friendly atmosphere. The owner is an old friend, and they're looking for staff with genuine warmth and resilience." Based on what little I've seen, you have both in abundance." Olivia felt a flicker of hope, quickly tempered by practicality. Pike Place is pretty far from my apartment. The commute would be— "There are options for that too," Daniel interjected gently, "but one step at a time. Would you be open to meeting my friend for an interview tomorrow? I promise it would be worth your time." She hesitated only briefly. "Yes, I could do that." They arranged the details, a 10 a.m. meeting at a cafe near the market. As they were about to disconnect, Daniel added, "And Olivia, this isn't charity. This is recognizing potential. Remember that." After hanging up, Olivia sat quietly on her threadbare couch, torn between cautious optimism and ingrained skepticism. In her experience, opportunities rarely fell from the sky, and when they seemed to, there was usually a catch. But what choice did she have? With eviction looming and Lily's future at stake, she had to explore every avenue, even those that arrived in unexpected Uber rides. A soft knock at the door announced Mrs. Diaz with her promised soup, a hearty chicken and rice that filled the tiny apartment with comforting aromas. The older woman took one look at Olivia's face and sat down beside her. "Something happened," she stated rather than asked, her accent thickening with concern. "Tell me." So Olivia did, recounting the strange encounter in the Uber and Daniel's unexpected offer. As she spoke, Mrs. Diaz's expression shifted from worry to thoughtful consideration. "In my 70 years," the older woman said when Olivia finished, "I have learned that God sometimes sends angels in strange packages. Not all kindness has a price tag, mijita." "But a CEO, Mrs. Diaz? Why would someone like that bother with someone like me?" Mrs. Diaz patted Olivia's hand. "Perhaps because someone once bothered with him. Kindness creates echoes that travel far beyond what we can see." Later that night, after Mrs. Diaz had gone and Lily had been fed and settled back to sleep, Olivia found herself unable to rest. The apartment felt especially small tonight, the walls closing in with the weight of unpaid bills and uncertain futures. On impulse, she opened her laptop, a refurbished model that frequently froze, and searched for Daniel Chen Horizon Innovations. The results made her breath catch. Daniel wasn't just any CEO, he was the founder of one of Seattle's fastest-growing tech companies specializing in AI solutions for social services and non-profit organizations. Articles described him as a visionary with a conscience and the rare tech leader who prioritizes social impact over profit margins. One photo showed him accepting an award for corporate citizenship, his speech quoted as saying, "Technology is meaningless if it doesn't improve human lives, all human lives, not just those who can afford the latest gadgets." Another article mentioned his background, raised by a single mother who worked as a hotel housekeeper, full scholarship to MIT, turned down lucrative offers from Silicon Valley giants to start his own company with a social mission. Olivia closed the laptop, her mind spinning. The man whose shoulder she drooled on in an Uber was actually a tech millionaire, with a rags-to-riches story that paralleled her own circumstances. It seemed too coincidental, too perfectly aligned to be real. Yet something about their brief interaction had felt authentic. The way he'd calmed Lily, the absence of condescension in his voice, the genuine warmth in his eyes. None of it had felt calculated or false. As rain continued to patter against her windows, Olivia made a decision. She would go to the interview tomorrow, but with her guard firmly up. She would listen, evaluate, and decide for herself if this unexpected opportunity was truly what it seemed, a genuine hand-up rather than a handout with hidden strings. What she couldn't possibly know was that across the city, in a penthouse overlooking Elliott Bay, Daniel Chen was making calls and sending emails, setting in motion events that would change the trajectory of her life in ways neither of them could fully anticipate. The universe had indeed put the right stranger in her path, but whether that was blessing or complication remained to be seen. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a rare gift in Seattle's typically overcast autumn. Olivia stood before her closet, scrutinizing the meager selection of interview-appropriate clothing. After trying on 3 different combinations, she settled on the same blue blouse from yesterday, paired with her only decent pair of black pants, freshly ironed to remove yesterday's wrinkles. "What do you think, Lily?" she asked, turning to her daughter, who sat propped among pillows on the bed, gnawing contentedly on a teething ring. "Professional enough to impress a fancy restaurant owner?" Lily responded with a happy gurgle, waving her chubby arms enthusiastically. "I'll take that as a yes," Olivia laughed, the sound surprising her. When was the last time she had genuinely laughed? The weight of constant struggle had a way of muting joy, of making even small moments of happiness feel like luxuries she couldn't afford. Mrs. Diaz arrived exactly at 9:15, waving away Olivia's profuse thanks as she settled into the apartment's only comfortable chair and immediately began making faces at Lily, who squealed with delight. "You look nice," the older woman commented, her eyes shrewd as they took in Olivia's appearance. "But your eyes still show worry. Remember what I said, not all kindness has a price." "I'm trying to believe that," Olivia replied, gathering her purse and the worn leather portfolio that contained her resume, a single page documenting a series of service jobs, each lasting longer than the one before it. What it couldn't show was her work ethic, her determination, the fact that she'd never missed a shift even when Lily was colicky or she herself was running a fever. The bus ride to Pike Place Market took 40 minutes, including one transfer. Olivia spent the time rehearsing answers to potential interview questions, trying to formulate responses that would frame her situation as a strength rather than a liability. Yes, she was a single mother. Yes, she had responsibilities. But those very factors made her more reliable, more determined to succeed. The cafe where she was to meet Daniel's friend was tucked into a corner of the market, its large windows offering a stunning view of Elliott Bay. From the outside, it looked intimidatingly upscale, the kind of place that served $8 lattes and catered to tourists and tech workers with expense accounts. Olivia hesitated at the entrance, suddenly aware of her second-hand clothes and drugstore makeup. What was she doing here? This world wasn't meant for people like her. As she was considering whether to simply turn around and go home, a voice called her name. Daniel stood just inside the door, dressed more casually than yesterday in dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt that somehow still managed to look expensive. "You came," he said, his smile warm and seemingly genuine. "I'm glad." "I almost didn't," Olivia admitted, honesty winning out over social niceties. "This place is not exactly where people like me usually hang out." Daniel's expression softened. "And what kind of people would that be?" "You know," she gestured vaguely at herself, "single mums from Rainier Valley with maxed-out credit cards and eviction notices." She hadn't meant to reveal quite that much, but lack of sleep and nerves had loosened her tongue. Daniel's eyes registered surprise, then concern. "Eviction notices?" Olivia waved her hand dismissively. "Sorry, oversharing. Nervous habit. Can we pretend I didn't say that?" Daniel looked like he wanted to pursue the topic, but instead nodded and gestured toward a corner table where a woman was typing on a laptop. "Natalie's waiting for us. She's the owner of Terroir, the restaurant I mentioned." As they approached, the woman looked up. In her early 40s, with salt and pepper hair cut in a stylish bob, she exuded an air of confident competence. Her smile was professional but warm as she stood to shake Olivia's hand. "Natalie Kim," she introduced herself. "Daniel speaks very highly of you." Olivia shot Daniel a confused glance. They'd spent less than an hour together. How could he speak highly of someone he barely knew? But she returned the handshake firmly. "Olivia Reyes, thank you for meeting with me." They settled at the table, where 3 steaming mugs already waited. "I took the liberty of ordering," Natalie explained. "Chai latte for me, black coffee for Daniel, and—" She gestured to the 3rd mug. "I wasn't sure what you'd prefer, so I got you our house specialty, vanilla bean latte with cinnamon." The thoughtfulness of the gesture caught Olivia off guard. This didn't feel like any job interview she'd ever had before. "Thank you," she said, taking a small sip. The rich flavor exploded on her tongue, sweet but not cloying, with complex notes she couldn't even identify. It was possibly the best thing she'd tasted in months, a far cry from the instant coffee that was her usual morning fuel. "So," Natalie began, closing her laptop, "Daniel tells me you're looking for a position that offers stability and growth potential. Tell me about your background in food service." For the next 20 minutes, Olivia found herself engaged in what felt less like an interview and more like a genuine conversation. Natalie asked insightful questions about her experience, her customer service philosophy, how she handled difficult situations. She didn't flinch when Olivia mentioned Lily, instead nodding thoughtfully. "Service industry hours can be brutal. For parents," Natalie observed. "At Terroir, we're experimenting with a different model: split shifts, consistent scheduling, comprehensive benefits including childcare subsidies. We believe that happy, secure staff create better experiences for customers." It sounded too good to be true. "That's unusual in the restaurant business," Olivia commented cautiously. Natalie smiled. "I know. I grew up in this industry. My parents owned a Korean restaurant in the International District. I watched my mother work herself to exhaustion, never seeing her children, never having security. When I had the chance to open my own place, I swore I'd do it differently." The conversation shifted to the restaurant itself, farm-to-table concept featuring Pacific Northwest ingredients with Asian influences, opening in 3 weeks, staff training beginning next week. As Natalie spoke, Olivia could see the passion behind the business, the thoughtful intention in every decision. "The position I have in mind is server-host hybrid," Natalie explained, "starting at $18 per hour plus tips with a guaranteed 35 hours per week. Benefits begin after 60 days, including health insurance and the childcare subsidy I mentioned." Olivia struggled to keep her expression neutral as her mind raced with calculations. That was nearly twice what she'd been making at her last job. With actual benefits and predictable hours, it would be enough to catch up on rent, maybe even start a small savings account. "That sounds incredible," she said honestly. "But I have to ask, why me? I'm sure you have applicants with more experience, more formal training." Natalie glanced at Daniel, then back to Olivia. "Experience can be gained. Skills can be taught. What can't be trained is character, resilience, grace under pressure, genuine warmth. Daniel said he saw all 3 in you during a 20-minute Uber ride with a fussy baby." Olivia blushed, still not entirely comfortable with the idea that their chance encounter had led to this opportunity. He was being kind. "He was being observant," Natalie corrected. "One of his more annoying qualities, actually. He notices everything." This was said with affectionate exasperation, suggesting a long friendship. After a few more questions about scheduling and training, Natalie stood. "I have another meeting across town, but I'd like to offer you the position, Olivia. Can you start training next Monday?" Stunned by the speed of the offer, Olivia could only nod. "Excellent. I'll have the paperwork emailed to you today." Natalie shook her hand again, then hugged Daniel briefly before departing, leaving Olivia and Daniel alone at the table. "That was—" Olivia began, then stopped, unsure how to articulate the whirlwind of emotions she was experiencing. "Unexpected?" Daniel suggested with a small smile. To put it mildly. She studied his face, searching for clues to his motivation. Why are you doing this, really? Daniel's expression grew serious. Would you believe me if I said it just felt like the right thing to do? Not really, Olivia admitted. In my experience, people usually want something in return. Fair enough. Daniel nodded, accepting her skepticism as reasonable. Let me show you something then, if you have time. Curiosity overcame caution, and Olivia nodded. They left the cafe, stepping into the bustling energy of Pike Place Market. The familiar sounds and smells, fresh fish being tossed by vendors, the sweet aroma of bakeries, street musicians playing for tips, surrounded them. As Daniel led her through the crowd, instead of heading toward the market's main attractions, he guided her down a side street to a nondescript door marked only by a small plaque. Horizon Community Initiative. He unlocked it with a keycard and held it open for her. Inside was a bright open space divided into several areas. A computer lab where people of various ages worked at sleek terminals, a play area where children built elaborate structures with blocks, a kitchen where cooking classes appeared to be in progress. What is this place? Olivia asked, taking in the scene. One of our community tech hubs, Daniel explained. Horizon Innovations funds 5 of these across the city. Free internet access, technology education, coding classes for kids, digital literacy for seniors, job search assistance. A middle-aged woman approached them, her face lighting up when she saw Daniel. Mr. Chen! Perfect timing. Jasmine just got the job at Microsoft. Daniel's genuine delight was unmistakable. That's fantastic, Eleanor. Where is she? I want to congratulate her. She left for orientation, but she said to tell you thank you. Again. The woman turned curious eyes to Olivia. Eleanor, this is Olivia. Olivia, Eleanor manages this hub and knows more about what this community needs than anyone else in Seattle. Eleanor's handshake was firm and warm. Any friend of Daniel's is welcome here. Are you interested in our programs? Before Olivia could respond, a small voice called out, Mr. Daniel! A boy of about 8 raced over, brandishing a tablet. I finished the coding module. Look at my game. Daniel crouched to the boy's level, examining the tablet with serious attention. Tyler, this is incredible. You added sound effects since last time. The boy beamed with pride. Ms. Eleanor said if I finish the whole course, I could maybe get a scholarship for the summer tech camp. She's absolutely right, Daniel confirmed, his eyes crinkling with genuine affection. Keep up the great work. As Tyler ran back to his project, Daniel straightened and met Olivia's questioning gaze. This is what Horizon really does, he said quietly. The AI solutions for businesses pay the bills, but this, connecting people with opportunities, breaking down barriers to technology, this is our purpose. Olivia looked around the space with new eyes, seeing not just a community center, but a vision made manifest. And you fund all this? Horizon does, Daniel corrected. We allocate 30% of our profits to community initiatives. It's built into our business model, not an afterthought. They continued through the space, Daniel greeting people by name, asking about specific projects or family members. It was clear this wasn't a photo op or a rare visit. He was a regular presence here, genuinely invested in the community. Eventually, they found themselves in a small courtyard garden at the back of the building, sitting on a bench surrounded by raised vegetable beds tended by neighborhood residents. My mother cleaned offices at night and worked retail during the day, Daniel said after a comfortable silence. She was brilliant, could solve complex math problems in her head, taught herself English by reading novels, fixed everything in our apartment herself. But she never had opportunities that matched her abilities. Olivia listened, beginning to understand. When I was Lily's age, we lived in a one-room apartment not much bigger than a closet. Mom would carry me to the public library while she used their computers to take online courses. A librarian noticed, started watching me while Mom studied, recommended her for a scholarship program. He paused, running his hand along the wooden bench. That librarian changed our lives with one small act of kindness, not charity, connection, opening a door that would have remained closed otherwise. Like you're doing for me, Olivia said softly. Daniel nodded. I'm in a position to open doors now. That's all I'm doing, opening a door. You're the one with the courage to walk through it, the skills to make the most of what's on the other side. For the first time since their strange meeting in the Uber, Olivia felt the tight knot of suspicion in her chest begin to loosen. His story rang true, resonating with her own experiences of closed doors and missed opportunities. The eviction notice, Daniel said carefully. If you don't mind me asking, how behind are you? Olivia stiffened slightly, her pride warring with practicality. 2 months. The notice says I have until the end of the week before they start proceedings. Daniel seemed to be calculating something. The job with Natalie is solid. She's not doing me a favor by hiring you. She's genuinely impressed, but the pay won't start for at least 2 weeks, and the eviction. I'll figure something out, Olivia said quickly, not wanting his pity. I always do. I'm sure you will, Daniel agreed, but sometimes figuring it out comes with unnecessary sacrifice and stress. Would you consider a loan? Strictly business. Proper documentation, reasonable payment terms once you're working. Olivia's first instinct was to refuse outright. Debt was a slippery slope, one she'd been carefully avoiding despite her financial struggles. But the thought of finding a new apartment, application fees, security deposits, moving costs was equally daunting. I don't know, she said honestly. That's a lot to accept from someone I just met. Fair point, Daniel acknowledged. Think about it. No pressure either way. The job opportunity stands regardless. They walked back through the hub, Olivia, increasingly impressed by the genuine interactions between Daniel and the community members. Whatever his motives, his commitment to this place and these people was real. Outside, the afternoon sun had broken through Seattle's clouds, casting the city in a golden light that softened its edges. They stood awkwardly on the sidewalk, their unexpected connection having deepened beyond the randomness of their first meeting, but not yet defined into something either could name. I should get back to Lily, Olivia said finally. Mrs. Diaz has her own grandchildren to pick up from school later. Daniel nodded. Of course. I'm glad you came today, Olivia. And I'm really glad you connected with Natalie. Me too. She hesitated, then added, Thank you, not just for the introduction, but for showing me this place. It helps me understand. Well, you, I guess. His smile was warm. Would you and Lily like a ride home? My car's just around the corner. The offer was tempting. The bus would take at least twice as long as a direct drive, but Olivia shook her head. Thanks, but I think I need some time to process everything. I understand. He pulled out his phone. Can I at least call you a rideshare? My treat, no strings attached. This smaller kindness seemed acceptable. Okay, thank you. As they waited for the car, Daniel asked casually, What's your email? For the loan paperwork if you decide you're interested. Olivia provided it, still uncertain whether she would accept his offer, but increasingly open to the possibility. The rideshare arrived, a nice SUV, much cleaner than yesterday's Uber, and Daniel opened the door for her. I meant what I said yesterday, he told her as she settled into the seat. This isn't charity. It's recognizing potential in you, in what you'll contribute to Natalie's restaurant, in the future you're building for Lily. Something about the sincerity in his voice made her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "I'll think about the loan," she promised. "And Daniel? Thank you for seeing something in me worth investing in." His expression softened. That part was easy. As the car pulled away from the curb, Olivia watched Daniel through the rear window, standing tall and thoughtful on the sidewalk, a man whose unexpected entrance into her life had opened possibilities she hadn't dared to imagine 24 hours ago. The drive back to her apartment was filled with quiet contemplation. The driver, sensing her mood, kept the radio low and didn't attempt conversation. Olivia's mind replayed the events of the day: Natalie's job offer, the community hub, Daniel's story about his mother. Each piece added to her understanding of this stranger who had, through whatever combination of fate and coincidence, become a pivotal figure in her life. By the time the car stopped outside her building, Olivia had made a decision. The job with Natalie was a legitimate opportunity, one she would have been foolish to refuse regardless of how it came about. The loan. That required more consideration, but she was leaning toward acceptance. Not out of desperation, though that certainly factored in, but because something told her Daniel Chen was that rarest of things, a person whose actions aligned with his words. Mrs. Diaz was at the door almost before Olivia could knock. Lily balanced on her hip. "How did it go?" the older woman asked eagerly. "Your face tells me good news." "I got the job," Olivia confirmed, taking Lily into her arms and breathing in her sweet baby scent. "Better pay, consistent hours, even benefits." After a few months. "Gracias a Dios," Mrs. Diaz murmured, making the sign of the cross. "I told you, mijita, angels come in strange packages." Later, after Mrs. Diaz had gone and Lily was down for her afternoon nap, Olivia opened her laptop to find an email already. Waiting. The subject line read simply, "Door opened." Inside was a job offer letter from Natalie, confirming everything they had discussed, along with new hire paperwork and training schedules. Below that was a separate attachment, a loan agreement for exactly the amount Olivia owed in back rent, plus 1 month forward, with reasonable repayment terms starting 60 days after her employment began. The note from Daniel was simple. No pressure, no strings, just an open door. The choice to walk through is entirely yours. Olivia's finger hovered over the keyboard, her mind racing with possibilities and uncertainties. 24 hours ago, she had been a desperate, single mother with dwindling options and an eviction looming. Now she had a promising job, a potential solution to her housing crisis, and most surprisingly, what felt like the beginning of a meaningful connection with someone who understood her struggles in a way few others could. Was it all too good to be true? Perhaps. But as she looked at Lily sleeping peacefully, at the eviction notice that had been causing her such anxiety, at the opportunity literally at her fingertips, Olivia made her choice. Sometimes faith required a leap, and sometimes angels did indeed come in unexpected packages, even in the form of chance encounters in the back of an Uber. She clicked reply and began to type. The morning sun filtered through Olivia's apartment window, casting golden patterns across the worn linoleum floor. 2 weeks had passed since her chance encounter with Daniel Chen, and the transformation in her life felt almost dreamlike. The eviction notice that had once dominated her thoughts now sat in a drawer, stamped resolved, after Daniel's loan had cleared her debt with the property management company. The relief of that burden alone had been life-changing, allowing her to sleep through the night for the first time in months. Today marked her 5th day of training at Terroir, and already she felt a sense of belonging she'd never experienced in previous jobs. Natalie ran her restaurant with a perfect balance of professionalism and compassion, creating an environment where excellence was expected, but humanity was never forgotten. "What do you think, sweet girl?" Olivia asked, holding up 2 different, shirts as Lily watched from her playpen. The blue one says, "Responsible professional," but the green brings out my eyes. Lily gurgled and reached for a colourful stacking toy, clearly unimpressed with her mother's fashion dilemma. "You're right, the green it is." Olivia slipped on the emerald blouse, a thrift store find from years ago that somehow still fit perfectly, and checked her reflection. The woman staring back at her seemed different somehow. The perpetual worry lines around her eyes had softened, and there was a spark of something that might almost be called hope. Her phone chimed with a text from Mrs. Diaz. "Tamales tonight to celebrate your first week. Bring your appetite." Olivia smiled, typing back a grateful acceptance. The older woman had been delighted by the positive turn in Olivia's circumstances, claiming vindication for her belief in angels in strange packages. As for the angel himself, Daniel had maintained a respectful distance since their meeting at the community hub. He'd sent one text after her loan acceptance, a simple, "Glad you're walking through the door. You've got this." Nothing more. No pressure, no hovering, no sense that she owed him anything beyond the terms of their formal agreement. Yet his absence created its own kind of presence. Olivia found herself thinking about him at odd moments, when a customer at Terroir mentioned innovative technology, when she passed a coffee shop similar to the one where they'd met Natalie, when Lily was particularly fussy, and she remembered how quickly he'd soothed her in the Uber. She'd looked him up online a few more times, learning bits and pieces about his company and philanthropic work. One article had particularly caught her attention, a profile in a business magazine describing how he'd turned down a $1 billion acquisition offer because the purchasing company wanted to discontinue the community initiatives that made up Horizon's core mission. "Some things aren't for sale," he'd been quoted as saying. "The technology we create belongs to the communities that inspired it." The quote had lingered in her mind, adding another dimension to her understanding of this complex man who had entered her life so unexpectedly. The buzz of the intercom interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Diaz wouldn't be coming by until evening, and Olivia wasn't expecting any deliveries. Warily, living in her neighborhood had taught her caution, she pressed the speaker button. "Yes?" "Package delivery for Olivia Reyes," came the response. Puzzled, she buzzed the delivery person in and waited by her door. When the knock came, she opened it to find a courier holding a large rectangular box wrapped in simple brown paper. "Sign here, please," he said, offering a digital tablet. After signing, Olivia brought the mysterious package inside. It was surprisingly light for its size, with no return address visible. Carefully, she unwrapped it to reveal a sleek white box with a simple embossed logo, Horizon Innovations. Her heart quickened as she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in protective foam, was a tablet computer, clearly high-end and brand new. A small card sat atop it, bearing a handwritten note. "Olivia, this is the same model we use at the community hubs. Thought it might be useful for job research, online classes, or just letting Lily watch educational videos when you need a moment's peace. No strings, no expectations, just a tool to help open more doors." Daniel. Olivia sat heavily on the couch, the tablet in her lap. Her first instinct was to refuse the gift. It was too expensive, too personal, too much like charity despite his disclaimer. But another part of her recognized the genuine thoughtfulness behind it. He hadn't sent jewelry or clothes or anything that suggested romantic intentions. Instead, he'd sent something practical, something that acknowledged her ambitions beyond just surviving. Before she could decide how to respond, her phone rang. The screen showed Natalie Kim, Terroir. "Hello, Olivia. I'm so sorry to do this," Natalie said without preamble, her voice tight with stress. "I know you're not scheduled until later, but Maya just called in sick, and we have a private event starting in 2 hours. Any chance you could come in early? I wouldn't ask, but "I'll be there," Olivia interrupted. "Just need to arrange childcare." The relief in Natalie's voice was palpable. "You're a lifesaver, and bring Lily if you need to. We can set her up in my office. There's a playpen there from when my sister's kids visit." After hanging up, Olivia called Mrs. Diaz, who immediately agreed to watch Lily. "You go, Mijita. Show them what you can do. The tamales will wait." Within 30 minutes, Olivia was dressed and ready, Lily settled with Mrs. Diaz, and the tablet carefully returned to its box. A decision for another day. Right now, she had a job to do and the opportunity to prove herself valuable during a crisis was not one she intended to waste. The restaurant was a hive of controlled chaos when she arrived. The private event was for a tech company celebrating a product launch. 30 guests expected, 5-course menu with wine pairings, speeches and presentations between courses. "You're here," Natalie greeted her, relief evident in her harried expression. "I know you're still training, but I need you to take lead on tables 5 through 8. Jackson will support you, but you'll be primary server." Olivia nodded, surprised by the responsibility, but determined to rise to the challenge. "I've got it. What's the timeline?" For the next hour, she absorbed information like a sponge: menu details, service protocols, guest preferences, timing for each course. By the time the first attendees arrived, she felt prepared. If slightly nervous, the event began smoothly. Olivia moved efficiently between her tables, balancing professionalism with warm personal attention to each guest. The complexities of the service, specific wine pairings, dietary restrictions, precise timing between courses challenged her, but in a way that felt invigorating rather than overwhelming. During the third course, as she was describing the locally sourced mushrooms featured in the risotto, she glanced up to find familiar eyes watching her from across the room. Daniel sat at table 9 outside her service section, engaged in conversation with a woman in a sharp business suit, but with his attention momentarily fixed on Olivia. Their eyes met briefly, and he offered a small, encouraging smile before returning to his conversation. Olivia continued her description without missing a beat, but her mind raced. Was his presence coincidence? Had he known she would be here? Was this tech company connected to Horizon? She didn't have time to dwell on these questions as the event proceeded. Between courses 4 and 5, during a presentation about the company's new software platform, she managed to approach his table while refreshing water glasses. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said quietly. Daniel looked genuinely pleased to see her. "Likewise. I'm just here as a potential investor. Natalie mentioned you were training, but I had no idea you'd be working this event." Before she could respond, the presenter called Daniel's name, asking for his thoughts on the integration possibilities with AI platforms like Horizons. Olivia moved on to her other tables, listening with one ear as Daniel spoke articulately about technological ecosystems and ethical data practices. By the time the event concluded 3 hours later, Olivia was exhausted but exhilarated. The guests had been impressed with the food and service, with several specifically complimenting Natalie on her new hire's professionalism. As the last guests departed and the staff began clean-up, Natalie pulled Olivia aside. "You were amazing today. Handling a complex private event during your first week, that's not something most people could do so seamlessly." "Thank you for trusting me with it," Olivia replied, the praise warming her more than she expected. "Trust was earned, not given," Natalie corrected, "which is why I want to fast-track your training. I need someone to help manage the day-to-day once we open fully, and you've got exactly the combination of skills and temperament I've been looking for." Olivia stared at her, stunned. "You mean like assistant manager?" "Eventually, yes. We'd start you as shift lead with management training. It would mean a salary instead of hourly wages, plus additional benefits. More responsibility, but also more predictable hours. No more late nights unless there's a special event. The offer was beyond anything Olivia had dared to hope for. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," came a voice from behind them. Daniel stood in the doorway to the kitchen, his tie loosened and jacket draped over his arm. "Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to thank you both for an excellent event before I headed out." Natalie waved him over. "Perfect timing. I was just offering Olivia a promotion path, and she looks like she's seen a ghost." Daniel's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Shocked by your own capabilities? Don't be. Natalie doesn't make offers like this lightly." "It's not that," Olivia said, finding her voice. "It's just everything's happening so fast. 2 weeks ago, I was facing eviction, and now—" She gestured helplessly, unable to articulate the whirlwind of changes. "Now you're demonstrating exactly why doors should have been opened for you long ago," Daniel finished simply. There was something in his tone, not pity, not condescension, but a straightforward acknowledgement of her value that steadied her. Olivia took a deep breath and turned back to Natalie. "Yes, I accept. Thank you for the opportunity." Natalie beamed. "Excellent. We'll discuss details tomorrow. For now, go home and rest. You've more than earned it." After Natalie moved away to speak with other staff members, Olivia found herself alone with Daniel for the first time since their meeting at the community hub. "I got your gift," she said. "The tablet." Daniel nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "Too much?" "I'm not sure," she answered honestly. "It's incredibly generous, but you're wondering if there are strings attached," he finished. "Fair question. Are there?" The directness of her own question surprised her. Daniel considered his response carefully. "Not in the way you might be thinking. I don't expect anything from you, Olivia. Not gratitude, not special treatment, certainly not personal involvement, unless that's something you would want entirely on your own terms." He paused, then continued more softly. "I sent it because I believe in investing in people's potential. The tablet is a tool, nothing more. Use it. Don't use it. That's entirely your choice." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, yet Olivia sensed something beneath it, a carefully maintained distance perhaps, or an emotion kept deliberately in check. "I should go," she said finally. "Mrs. Diaz has Lily, and it's getting late. Of course, can I call you a car?" She shook her head. "The bus stop is right outside. I'll be fine." Daniel looked like he wanted to insist, but instead nodded respectfully. "Congratulations again on the promotion offer. It's well deserved." As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, Olivia felt a strange tension between them, not uncomfortable exactly, but charged with unspoken possibilities. This man had fundamentally altered the trajectory of her life, yet she still wasn't entirely sure why. His explanations made logical sense, paying forward the kindness shown to his mother, investing in potential, but they didn't quite explain the look in his eyes when he watched her describe mushroom risotto to strangers or the careful way. He maintained his distance while simultaneously appearing in her orbit. Outside, the Seattle night was cool and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Olivia stood at the bus stop, reflecting on the day's events and the strange, serendipitous path that had led her here. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a desperate mother in an Uber she could barely afford. Now she was on a career path with genuine promise, her housing secure, her future suddenly expansive with possibility. And yet, something felt unresolved. The loan from Daniel, while formally documented and professionally arranged, still created a connection between them that transcended normal business relationships. The tablet, still sitting in its box on her coffee table, represented another thread in the increasingly complex tapestry of their acquaintance. Who was Daniel Chen to her? Benefactor? Potential friend? Something else entirely? And more importantly, who did she want him to be? The bus arrived before she could untangle these questions, and Olivia boarded with her thoughts still swirling. As the vehicle pulled away from the curb, she glanced back at the restaurant to see Daniel standing outside, watching her departure. Their eyes met briefly through the window, and he raised a hand in farewell, a simple gesture that somehow carried the weight of possibilities neither of them had yet dared to name. Back in her apartment, after retrieving a sleeping Lily from Mrs. Diaz and settling her into her crib, Olivia found herself drawn to the white box containing the tablet. She opened it again, running her fingers over the sleek device, considering what it represented. On impulse, she turned it on. The screen illuminated with the Horizon logo, then transitioned to a setup page. As she followed the prompts, she discovered the tablet was preloaded with applications, not just basic ones, but specific tools, a budgeting program, childcare resources for Seattle, educational apps for toddlers, online course platforms. It wasn't a generic gift. Daniel had considered exactly what might be useful to her specifically, to her circumstances and potential needs. The realization touched her deeply, more so than if he had sent something far more expensive but less thoughtful. She was about to explore further when a notification appeared, an email from Daniel sent just minutes ago. "Olivia," it read, "I realize my appearance at Terroir tonight might have seemed calculated. It wasn't. My investment group was invited weeks ago, and I had no idea you would be working. Seeing you there, handling everything with such grace and competence only confirmed what I suspected from our first meeting. You are extraordinary in ways that have nothing to do with my intervention. I want to be clear about something. The doors I've helped open for you would be meaningless if you weren't exactly the right person to walk through them. Natalie's offer today wasn't because of me, it was because of you. I also want to be transparent about my own feelings, which are becoming increasingly difficult to separate from my desire to help. I find myself thinking about you often, and not just as someone I was fortunate enough to assist. This puts me in a complicated position, as the last thing I want is for you to feel any obligation or pressure. So, I'm going to step back for a while. The loan agreement stands exactly as written. The tablet is yours with no expectations. Natalie's offer is based entirely on your merit. You have everything you need to move forward without my presence complicating matters. If, at some point, you'd like to reconnect on whatever terms feel right to you, you know how to reach me. Until then, I wish you and Lily nothing but success and happiness. Respectfully, Daniel." Olivia read the email twice, her emotions conflicted. On one hand, his honesty was refreshing, acknowledging feelings without imposing them, recognizing the power imbalance their unusual meeting had created. On the other hand, his decision to step back felt like a loss, even though she wasn't entirely sure what she wanted from him. She began typing a response, then stopped, deleted it, and started again. What could she say? That she was grateful. That seemed inadequate. That she shared his confusion. That felt too vulnerable. That she wanted him to stay in her life. She wasn't even sure if that was true, or if her feelings were simply a product of the dramatic improvement in her circumstances that she associated with him. In the end, she set the tablet aside without responding. Daniel had given her space to figure out her own mind without pressure, and perhaps that was exactly what she needed. Time to settle into her new role at Terroir, to establish financial stability on her terms, to determine who Olivia Reyes was when she wasn't in constant crisis mode. Only then would she be able to evaluate what, if anything, she wanted from the man who had fallen asleep with her baby in his arms and woken her to a world of possibilities she had almost stopped believing existed. The following weeks passed in a blur of activity. Terroir's grand opening was a resounding success, with local food critics praising the innovative menu and impeccably trained staff. Olivia thrived in her role, quickly mastering the complexities of the restaurant's operations and developing a rapport with both customers and co-workers. Her financial situation stabilized. With her increased income, she began making payments on Daniel's loan, ahead of schedule, a small assertion of independence that felt important to her sense of self. She opened a savings account for the first time in years, setting aside a small amount from each paycheck for Lily's future. The tablet became an integral part of their lives. Lily delighted in the educational games, while Olivia enrolled in an online business management course, studying late at night after her daughter was asleep. The knowledge she gained helped her excel at Terroir, further impressing Natalie with her growing expertise. Yet despite these positive developments, Olivia felt a persistent emptiness, a space in her life that had briefly been filled by Daniel's presence and now echoed with his absence. She hadn't responded to his email, and true to his word, he had stepped back completely. No texts, no unexpected appearances, no further gifts, just silence. Mrs. Diaz noticed the change in her mood. One evening, as they shared coffee while Lily played nearby, the older woman fixed Olivia with a knowing look. "You miss him," she stated simply. Olivia didn't pretend to misunderstand. "It's complicated." "Only because you make it so," Mrs. Diaz replied with the wisdom of her years. "Pride is a luxury, Mijita. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is acknowledge when someone matters to us." "It's not just pride," Olivia protested. "He changed my life. How do I separate gratitude from whatever else I might feel?" Mrs. Diaz smiled gently. "Perhaps you don't need to separate them. Perhaps they are threads of the same fabric." The conversation lingered in Olivia's mind as October turned to November and Seattle's skies grew consistently grey. Terroir continued to flourish, and with it, Olivia's confidence and skills. Natalie formally promoted her to assistant manager, increasing her salary and responsibilities. "You've exceeded every expectation," Natalie told her during their review meeting. "I've never seen someone adapt and grow so quickly." "I've had motivation," Olivia replied, thinking of Lily, of the future she was finally able to envision beyond mere survival. Natalie studied her thoughtfully. "Have you spoken to Daniel recently?" The question caught Olivia off guard. "No, why?" "He's invested in a new restaurant venture across town. Nothing competitive with us, completely different concept, but he specifically recommended the owner work with suppliers who prioritize sustainable practices like we do. Said he'd seen firsthand how well it could work." Olivia absorbed this information, this small evidence that she, or at least her workplace, remained in his thoughts. He made his position clear. "The ball is in my court, and yet the ball sits motionless," Natalie observed with gentle humor. "Sometimes we need to give ourselves permission to want what we want, Olivia, especially when we've spent so long just trying to survive." That night, after putting Lily to bed, Olivia sat with the tablet on her lap. Daniel's weeks-old email, still marked unread despite her having memorized its contents. Outside, rain pattered against her windows, the same windows that had let in drafts last winter, but were now properly sealed thanks to maintenance requests she could confidently submit without fear of retaliatory rent increases. Everything in her life had transformed in the span of a month and a half, everything except the uncertain space in her heart where Daniel Chen had briefly resided. The man who had held her daughter offered his shoulder for her exhausted head and then stepped away to give her room to discover her own strength. With sudden clarity, Olivia realized Mrs. Diaz and Natalie were right. She had been hiding behind complexity, using the unusual circumstances of their meeting as an excuse to avoid vulnerability. The truth was simpler than she had allowed herself to acknowledge. She missed him. Not what he could do for her, not the doors he could open, but him, his kindness, his integrity, his quiet confidence in her capabilities. Before she could second-guess herself, she began typing a response to his long-ago email. "Daniel, I've started and deleted this message more times than I can count. Everything I write seems inadequate to express what these past weeks have meant, not just the tangible improvements in my circumstances, but the restoration of something I had nearly lost, hope. You were right to step back. I needed time to discover who I am when I'm not in constant crisis, to separate gratitude from other feelings, to find solid ground beneath my feet. I've found that ground now. I'm building a life for Lily and myself that no longer balances on the edge of disaster. I'm excelling at work, saving for the future, even taking online courses through that tablet you sent, which, by the way, has become Lily's favorite thing. She's already mastering puzzles meant for children twice her age. What I've realized, in your absence, is that while my life has improved in countless ways, there remains a space that opened when you entered it and has felt empty since you stepped away. Not because I need you to solve my problems or open more doors, but because I simply miss your presence, your perspective, the way you see the world and the people in it. I don't know what happens next. I don't have a 5-year plan for us or expectations about where this leads. All I know is that I'd like to reconnect, not out of obligation or gratitude, but because knowing you has made my life richer in ways that have nothing to do with financial stability. If you're still interested in exploring whatever this connection between us might be, I'd love to meet for coffee. This time I'm buying. Olivia! Her finger hovered over the send button for just a moment before she pressed it decisively. Whatever happened next, she had taken a step towards something that felt right, something that was entirely her choice. And in a life that had for so long been defined by limited options and desperate compromises, that freedom to choose was perhaps the most precious gift of all. The cafe buzzed with Saturday morning energy. Young professionals typing on laptops, friends catching up over artisanal pastries, baristas calling out elaborate coffee orders. Situated in a renovated industrial building in Seattle's capital, Hill neighborhood, with exposed brick walls and plants hanging from iron beams, it was precisely the kind of place Olivia would have felt out of place in 2 months ago. Now, seated at a corner table with Lily contentedly playing with wooden blocks in a portable high chair beside her, she felt a quiet confidence that had nothing to do with the carefully chosen outfit she wore or the fact that she could now afford the $5 latte sitting before her. She checked her phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. 10:27 a.m. Daniel was supposed to meet her at 10:30. After she'd sent that email 3 days ago, his response had come within hours, warm, genuine, and without a trace of the awkwardness she had feared. They had arranged to meet here at neutral ground that wasn't connected to either terroir or horizon. "Your mama's nervous," she whispered to Lily, who responded by holding up a block triumphantly. "Yes, that's very impressive engineering. Maybe you'll build apps like Daniel someday." The mention of his name sent another flutter through her stomach. What was she doing? Was this a date? A friendly catch-up? The beginning of something undefined but significant? She had deliberately chosen to bring Lily along, partly because Mrs. Diaz had a doctor's appointment this morning, but also as a gentle reminder that she came as a package deal, that any relationship with her would always include her daughter. Olivia. She looked up to find Daniel standing beside the table, slightly out of breath as if he'd hurried. He wore casual clothes, dark jeans and a grey sweater that brought out the blue of his eyes. The sight of him, actually present after weeks, of absence made her heart skip in a way that confirmed what she had suspected. This was more than gratitude, more than respect, more than friendship. "Daniel," she replied, standing to greet him. There was an awkward moment where neither seemed sure whether to shake hands, hug, or simply nod, resulting in a strange hybrid gesture that made them both laugh, breaking the tension. "Sorry if I'm a little late," he said, taking the seat across from her. "Traffic was—" "You're exactly on time," Olivia interrupted, smiling. "I was early." His gaze shifted to Lily, who was studying him with curious eyes. "Hello again, little one. Those are impressive structures you're building." To Olivia's surprise, Lily immediately held out a block to Daniel, her face bright with recognition. He accepted it solemnly, adding it to the top of her creation with careful precision that earned a delighted giggle. "She remembers you," Olivia said, amazed. "I'm memorable," Daniel replied with a hint of his usual confidence, then immediately softened. "Or maybe she just recognizes another architectural enthusiast when she sees one." A barista approached their table. "Can I get you something, sir?" "Black coffee, please," Daniel requested, then glanced at Olivia's nearly empty cup. "And another of whatever she's having." Olivia started to protest, but he gently cut her off. "You can get the next round. I believe in equality, not score-keeping." When the barista departed, a brief silence fell between them, not uncomfortable, but charged with unspoken thoughts and questions. Olivia decided directness was the best approach. "I've missed you," she said simply. "More than I expected to." Daniel's expression registered surprise at her candor, then shifted to something warmer. "I've missed you too. Stepping back was necessary, I think, but not easy." "Why was it necessary?" she asked, genuinely wanting to understand his perspective. He considered the question carefully. "Because I didn't want my feelings to become an obligation for you. When someone changes your life circumstances dramatically, it creates a power dynamic that can complicate genuine connection. I needed you to have space to decide what you wanted without feeling indebted." "And what about what you wanted?" Olivia pressed. A smile touched his lips. "What I wanted hasn't changed since that day in the Uber. To know you, to see where this unexpected connection might lead." He paused, then added, "But only if it's what you truly want too." Their drinks arrived, creating a brief interlude in the conversation. Lily chose that moment to drop a block, which rolled under a neighboring table. Daniel smoothly retrieved it, using the opportunity to compose himself before continuing. "Tell me about these past weeks," he said, returning to his seat. "Your email mentioned online courses?" Olivia recognized his shift to safer conversational territory and decided to allow it. They had time to navigate the deeper currents between them. For now, rebuilding their connection took precedence. "Business management," she confirmed, "specifically restaurant operations. Natalie's been letting me apply what I'm learning in real time. Last week, I restructured the inventory system and cut our food waste by almost 20%. Daniel's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "That's impressive. What prompted that particular focus?" As they fell into easy conversation about her work innovations, Lily's developmental milestones, and the changes in her life since they'd last spoken, Olivia noticed something significant. Daniel asked questions that showed he was truly listening, remembered details she mentioned in passing, and spoke about her accomplishments with admiration rather than paternalistic pride. He wasn't taking credit for her success. He was genuinely delighted by it. "Enough about me," she said eventually. "What about you? Natalie mentioned you're investing in a new restaurant concept." Daniel nodded. "Vietnamese-French fusion in Belltown." The chef worked in Hanoi for a decade before returning to Seattle. His vision is remarkable, honoring both culinary traditions while creating something entirely new. "Sounds like something else you believe in investing in," Olivia observed. Potential takes many forms, Daniel agreed. Sometimes it's a restaurant concept. Sometimes it's technology that can change communities sometimes. His eyes met, hers meaningfully. Sometimes it's a person who just needs one door opened to open 100 more themselves. The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. Before she could respond, Lily chose that moment to fling a block with surprising force, narrowly missing a passing customer. "I think someone's ready for a change of scenery," Olivia laughed, gathering the blocks into their cloth bag. "I promised her park time after this." "Volunteer Park is just a few blocks from here," Daniel suggested. "If you don't have other plans, maybe I could join you. Unless that would be—" "I'd like that," Olivia said, surprising herself with how easily the words came. "We'd both like that." The November day was crisp but clear as they walked the short distance to the park, Lily secured in her stroller, bundled against the chill. Their conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by comfortable silences and Lily's occasional commentary on passing dogs and colourful leaves. At the park's playground, they took turns pushing Lily on the baby swing, her peals of laughter drawing smiles from other parents. In these simple interactions, adjusting Lily's hat when it slipped, the synchronized way they moved to keep her entertained, the shared delight in her joy, Olivia felt something crystallizing between them that transcended their unusual beginning. Later, as Lily began showing signs of tiredness, they found a bench overlooking the park's reservoir. Seattle's iconic Space Needle was visible in the distance, alongside the growing skyline that included Horizon's headquarters. "Can I ask you something personal?" Olivia ventured as Lily dozed in her stroller beside them. Daniel turned toward her, open and attentive. "Of course. That day in the Uber, why did you really offer to help with Lily? You could have just put in earbuds, like the businessman in the front seat, pretended not to notice us." The question had lingered in her mind, despite all that had happened since. Daniel's expression grew reflective. "My mother used to tell me stories about people who helped us when I was too young to remember," he began. "A neighbor who watched me when she worked night shifts, a professor who let her bring me to evening classes. Small kindnesses that made impossible situations manageable." He paused, his gaze distant with memory. "There was one story she told repeatedly. We were on a bus from Chicago to Detroit, where she'd heard about better factory jobs. I was about Lily's age, with an ear infection, crying inconsolably. Other passengers were getting angry. Mom was exhausted, at her breaking point. Then a woman sat beside her, an older black woman with, as my mother described it, hands that looked like they'd worked harder than anyone's should have to. She took me from my mother's arms and began humming something low and soothing. Within minutes, I was quiet." Daniel's voice softened. "That woman stayed with us for the entire 6-hour journey. She shared her food, told my mother about Detroit, even helped us find a cheap motel when we arrived. We never saw her again, never knew her name. But my mother always said that woman's kindness gave her the strength to keep going when she was ready to give up." He turned to meet Olivia's eyes directly. "When I saw you in that Uber, it wasn't charity or pity, it was recognition. I saw my mother 30 years ago, fighting impossible odds with a baby in her arms and the world judging her struggle. Helping wasn't a choice, it was honoring every person who ever helped us." Olivia felt tears prickle behind her eyes, moved by both his story and the profound understanding it revealed. "Thank you for telling me that." "There's something else," Daniel continued, his expression growing more serious. "That night after I first met you, I couldn't stop thinking about how many other single parents are out there facing the same struggles. With no random CEO happening into their Uber, it felt so arbitrary, so incomplete." "What do you mean?" "I've been working with my team to develop a new initiative," he explained, a hint of excitement entering his voice. A comprehensive support program for single parents, not just housing, but education pathways, quality childcare, career development, technology access. We're calling it the Bridge program. Olivia's eyes widened. That's incredible. It's still in development, he clarified. We're partnering with existing non-profits, community leaders, and, this is important, people with lived experience. No savior complex, no paternalism, just removing structural barriers and providing tools for people to build their own success. Like you did with me, Olivia observed quietly. Daniel nodded. In a way, yes, but more systematic, more equitable than chance meetings in ride shares. He hesitated, then added, Actually, I was hoping you might consider being involved as a consultant, sharing your perspective. Paid position, of course, separate from anything personal between us. The offer caught her off guard. You want my input? Your insight would be invaluable, Daniel said earnestly. You've navigated these systems firsthand, found creative solutions, identified gaps that people like me might miss. But, he added quickly, there's absolutely no pressure. Your perspective on the program would be appreciated, but it's completely separate from us. The way he said us, tentative yet hopeful, sent a warm current through Olivia's chest. There was an us to consider, something forming between them that existed independently of professional opportunities or assistance. I'd need to think about it, she said honestly. It sounds meaningful, but I'd want to be sure I could contribute effectively while balancing Terroir and Lily. Of course, Daniel agreed immediately. Take all the time you need. The program is still in early stages. Lily stirred in her stroller, making the soft sounds that signaled she would soon wake. Olivia adjusted her blanket, using the moment to gather her thoughts. Daniel, she said finally, looking up to meet his gaze directly. I need to be clear about something, whatever happens between us, whether it's friendship or something more. It has to be separate from your helping me or my consulting on your program. I need to know that if this doesn't work out, if we decide we're better as friends, all of that remains intact. Absolutely, he responded without hesitation. Your job, the loan agreement, any potential role with Bridge, those all stand on their own merits, regardless of personal developments. His expression grew more serious. I value your independence too much to ever use those things as leverage. That's not who I am. The conviction in his voice resonated with what Olivia had observed over their weeks of acquaintance. Daniel's actions had consistently aligned with his words, stepping back when appropriate, supporting without controlling, recognizing her agency at every turn. Lily woke fully, reaching her arms up to be freed from the stroller. Olivia unbuckled. And to her surprise, Lily immediately reached toward Daniel. After a questioning glance at Olivia, who nodded permission, he lifted the baby onto his lap. You're making quite an impression on my daughter, Olivia commented, watching as Lily contentedly played with the zipper on Daniel's jacket. She has excellent taste, he replied with a smile that softened into something more vulnerable. Olivia, can I ask where we stand? I don't need definitions or commitments, just direction. The question was fair, asked without pressure, but with honest desire for clarity. Olivia considered her answer carefully, wanting to be truthful about both her interest and her caution. I think, she began slowly, that we're two people with a unique connection who are carefully exploring what that might mean. I know that I enjoy your company, that I've missed having you in my life, and that when I think about the future, I find myself hoping you're in it. She paused, then continued with characteristic directness. I also know that our starting point was unusual, our circumstances are complicated, and that moving forward requires thoughtfulness. What I'm suggesting is that we continue getting to Know each other, real dating, normal activities, the kind of foundation any relationship needs, while maintaining appropriate boundaries around the professional aspects of our connection. Daniel nodded, relief and warmth evident in his expression. That sounds perfect, thoughtful, measured steps forward, with clear boundaries and open communication. He smiled. And real dating sounds wonderful. Though I should warn you, my dating skills might be rusty. Building a company hasn't left much time for personal life. Mine too, Olivia admitted with a small laugh. Being a single mother working double shifts doesn't exactly create dating opportunities. Then we'll figure it out together, Daniel said, his free hand moving to cover hers on the bench between them. A simple touch that nonetheless sent a current of warmth up her arm. No rush, no pressure, just two people discovering what might be possible. Lily chose that moment to let out a happy squeal, reaching for a squirrel darting across the path before them. The simple, ordinary moment, a baby's delight, a crisp, autumn day, the tentative beginning of something neither had anticipated, felt perfect in its imperfection. As they walked back toward the city centre, Lily once again secured in her stroller, but now, clutching a colourful leaf Daniel had retrieved for her, Olivia felt a profound sense of rightness. Not because all her problems were solved, or because her future was suddenly guaranteed, but because she was walking her own path, a path she had fought for and earned, with people beside her who truly saw her value. Next Saturday, Daniel suggested as they approached the point where they would need to head in different directions. Maybe the three of us could visit the aquarium. Lily might enjoy the colourful fish. She would love that, Olivia agreed. And so would I. The moment of parting arrived, and this time there was no awkwardness. Daniel leaned down to give Lily a gentle high five, then straightened to meet Olivia's eyes. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For your email. For today. For being someone who reminds me why all the work matters." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. Without overthinking, Olivia stepped forward and kissed his cheek. A brief, warm gesture that somehow conveyed both promise and patience. "Until Saturday," she said softly. "Until Saturday," he echoed, his smile illuminating his entire face. As Olivia pushed Lily's stroller toward the bus stop that would take them home, she felt lighter than she had in years. The weight of constant struggle had been replaced by something new, not the absence of challenges, but the presence of possibility. 6 months later, Olivia stood in the center of her new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the cheerful chaos of moving day. Sunlight streamed through large windows that overlooked a small but well-maintained park, where children played on equipment she could easily monitor from her kitchen. "I think that's the last of the heavy stuff," Daniel announced, setting down a box labeled "Kitchen Fragile" with exaggerated care. "Unless you've been hiding a grand piano somewhere." Olivia laughed, passing him a glass of water. "No piano? But don't get too comfortable. We still have to assemble Lily's new bed." From the adjacent room came the sound of Lily's laughter mingled with Mrs. Diaz's animated voice as they arranged stuffed animals on a shelf. The older woman had been delighted by Olivia's move to this family-friendly building in a safer neighborhood, especially since it was only a 10-minute bus ride from her own apartment, allowing her to remain an important part of their lives. "I still can't believe you found this place," Olivia said, looking around at the spacious 2-bedroom apartment with its updated appliances and actual closet space. Luxuries her previous apartment had sorely lacked. "Don't thank me. Thank Natalie's cousin who manages the building," Daniel corrected. "All I did was mention you were looking. The reduced rent is because you agreed to host occasional cooking demonstrations in the community room." This was typical of their relationship over the past months. Daniel connecting rather than providing, facilitating opportunities that Olivia secured through her own merits. The balance they had established worked because it honored both his resources and her independence. Their romance had developed gradually, thoughtfully, with the kind of intention neither had experienced in previous relationships. Real dates, movies, hiking, museums, interspersed with quiet evenings at home after Lily was asleep, talking about everything from childhood memories to future dreams. They had navigated challenges too, miscommunications, occasional boundary, adjustments, the learning curve of integrating their very different lives. Professionally, both had flourished. Terroir had been named one of Seattle's best new restaurants, with Olivia's management skills specifically praised in a prominent review. Daniel's bridge program had launched its pilot phase, with Olivia serving on the advisory board alongside other single parents from diverse backgrounds, their collective wisdom shaping the initiative in ways institutional knowledge alone never could. Earth to Olivia. Daniel's voice broke through her reverie. Where did you go just now? She smiled, setting down her water glass. Just thinking about how much has changed since that day in the Uber. Sometimes it feels like another lifetime. Daniel stepped closer, his expression growing serious. Regrets? Not one, she answered without hesitation. Though I still think about how random it all was. If I'd taken a different Uber, if you'd been in a meeting instead of that car. I don't think it was random, Daniel said thoughtfully. Not entirely. Two people who value connection, who recognize something in each other that resonates with their own experience. Maybe we were always going to find each other somehow. That's surprisingly romantic coming from a tech CEO, Olivia teased, though the sentiment touched her. I contain multitudes, he quipped, then grew serious again. Actually, there's something I've been wanting to discuss with you. The shift in his tone caught her attention. Should I be worried? Not at all, he assured her. It's about the loan. Olivia tensed slightly. The loan that had saved her from eviction had been nearly repaid, with only 2 payments remaining according to their agreement. She had been scrupulous about maintaining the schedule, viewing it as an important aspect of their boundaries. What about it? She asked carefully. I'd like to forgive the remaining balance, Daniel said. Not as a gift or charity, but because I believe the original purpose has been fulfilled. You're stable now, building your future on your own terms. The loan served its purpose. It was a bridge over a temporary crisis, not a long-term obligation. Olivia considered his words. 6 months ago, she might have rejected the offer outright, seeing it as undermining her independence. Now, with the confidence that came from proven success and a relationship built on mutual respect, she could evaluate it more objectively. If we weren't dating, would you make the same offer to another bridge program participant in similar circumstances? She asked. Yes, Daniel answered without hesitation. In fact, we've structured the program's financial assistance as recoverable grants, repaid if possible, forgiven when appropriate milestones are reached. Olivia nodded, appreciating his honesty and the thought behind the offer. Then I accept. With one condition, the remaining amount goes into Lily's college fund instead. Daniel's face broke into a wide smile. I love that solution. Their conversation was interrupted by Lily toddling into the room, clutching a book nearly as big as she was. Story, she demanded, looking expectantly at both adults. Apparently unpacking can wait, Olivia laughed, lifting her daughter onto the single assembled piece of furniture, a comfortable sofa that had been Daniel's housewarming gift. As the 3 of them settled onto the couch, Lily nestled between them with her book. Olivia caught Daniel watching them with an expression of such contentment that it made her heart swell. This wasn't the life she had imagined for herself a year ago. It was better, richer, more fulfilling than anything she could have envisioned during those dark days of constant struggle. What had begun as a moment of desperate embarrassment in the back of an Uber A crying baby, a kind stranger, an unexpected connection had evolved into something profound, a partnership based on mutual respect, a support system founded on understanding rather than obligation, and a future bright, with possibilities that extended far beyond financial security. As Daniel began reading the story, his voice animated for Lily's benefit, Olivia silently thanked whatever confluence of fate, circumstance, and courage had brought them together. Not because he had rescued her. She had ultimately rescued herself, with tools he had helped provide, but because together they were building something neither could have created alone, a family defined not by biology or convention, but by choice, respect, and love that had been earned rather than simply given. In that moment, surrounded by unpacked boxes in a sun-filled apartment that represented not just a new home, but a new chapter, Olivia understood that the greatest gift wasn't having someone pay your rent in a moment of crisis. It was finding someone who believed in your ability to eventually pay it yourself, who saw your value when you had almost forgotten it, and who walked beside you rather than carrying you as you built the life you deserved. "You look like a boss lady," came a small voice from the doorway. Lily, now 4.5, leaned against the doorframe in her favorite polka dot dress, her dark curls framing a face that grew more expressive by the day. Olivia smiled, turning to her daughter. "Is that a good thing?" "The best thing," Lily declared with the absolute certainty only preschoolers could muster. "Miss Adele at school says boss ladies change the world. Does she now?" Olivia crouched to Lily's level, straightening the child's collar. "And what do you think?" Lily considered this seriously. "I think you already changed our world. And now you're gonna change the world for other mummies too." The simple wisdom in her daughter's words brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes. She blinked them back, careful not to smudge her makeup before the most important presentation of her career. "There you are." Mrs. Diaz appeared behind Lily, elegant in a floral dress she'd purchased specifically for today's event. The woman who had once been merely a neighbor had become family over the years, a beloved grandmother figure to Lily and trusted confidant to Olivia. "Daniel just called. The car will be here in 10 minutes, and you haven't eaten a thing all morning?" "I'm too nervous to eat," Olivia admitted, standing. Mrs. Diaz clicked her tongue disapprovingly. "Nonsense! You cannot change lives on an empty stomach." She pressed a wrapped breakfast sandwich into Olivia's hand. "Eat. Your story deserves to be told with a full voice, not one weakened by hunger." As Olivia obediently unwrapped the sandwich, her phone chimed with a text message. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. "Car's running early, already downstairs, no rush, just letting you know. You've got this. So proud of you." The simple message steadied her nerves. After 3 years together, Daniel still had that effect on her, grounding her when anxiety threatened to take hold, believing in her capabilities even when self-doubt crept in. Their relationship had evolved naturally from those tentative early days of careful boundaries and measured steps. They had built something rare and precious, a partnership of equals, despite their different starting points, a bond strengthened rather than weakened by the challenges they'd faced together. "We should go," Olivia said, taking a final bite of the sandwich. "Can't keep the future waiting." Mrs. Diaz smiled knowingly. "The future has been waiting for you to be ready for it, Mijita, and now you are." Downstairs, Daniel waited beside a sleek black Tesla, his face lighting up at the sight of the three of them emerging from the building. He'd aged well in the past 3 years, the occasional silver strand appearing at his temples, only adding distinguished character to his appearance. Success had not changed his fundamental nature. He remained the same thoughtful, purposeful man she'd met in that Uber, though perhaps softer around the edges, more prone to spontaneous laughter since Lily had become a permanent fixture in his life. "There's my favorite ladies," he greeted them, crouching to receive Lily's enthusiastic hug before straightening to kiss Olivia softly. "Ready for the big day?" "As I'll ever be," Olivia replied, accepting his embrace, drawing strength from his solid presence. The drive to downtown Seattle took 20 minutes, the conversation flowing easily among them, Mrs. Diaz recounting neighborhood gossip, Lily describing her latest preschool art project in meticulous detail, Daniel and Olivia exchanging the comfortable shorthand of a couple who no longer needed full sentences to communicate. When they arrived at the Horizon Innovations headquarters, an impressive glass building that somehow managed to be both modern and welcoming, Olivia felt a momentary hesitation. What awaited her inside represented the culmination of years of work, the transformation of a chance encounter into a movement with the potential to change thousands of lives. "Second thoughts?" Daniel asked quietly as they entered the lobby, his hand a reassuring pressure at the small of her back. "Not about the program," Olivia clarified. "Just wondering if I'm the right person to be its face." Daniel's expression grew serious. "You're exactly the right person, not because you once fell asleep on my shoulder in an Uber, but because you've helped build this from the ground up. Your insight, your experience, your refusal to accept patronizing solutions. The bridge program would be a shadow of itself without you." Before she could respond, they were approached by Horizon's communications director, a dynamic woman named Maya, who had been working closely with Olivia to prepare for today's announcement. "There you are!" Maya exclaimed. "The press is all ready." Gathering in the conference center, we have representatives from all major networks, plus social media influencers focusing on economic justice and family policy. Governor's office sent someone too. Olivia nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let me just get Lily settled first." They made their way to a specially prepared room adjacent to the conference center, a comfortable space with toys, books, and 2 childcare professionals from Horizon's on-site daycare facility. Several other children were already playing there, the offspring of various program participants who would be speaking alongside Olivia. "You'll be amazing, Mama," Lily said seriously, as Olivia crouched to hug her goodbye. "How did you get so wise?" Olivia asked, smoothing her daughter's curls. "Daniel says I got it from you," Lily replied with a grin, before spotting a friend across the room and dashing off without a backward glance. Mrs. Diaz squeezed Olivia's hand. "I'll stay with her. You go change the world." In the hallway outside the conference center, Olivia paused to collect herself. Through the glass doors, she could see the room filling with journalists, community leaders, potential funders, and most importantly, participants in the Bridge program's expanded pilot, single parents from across the socio-economic spectrum, all of whom had contributed to refining the initiative based on their lived experiences. "There's someone who wanted to wish you luck," Daniel said, guiding her toward a quiet corner where a familiar figure waited. "Natalie!" Olivia exclaimed, embracing her former boss and ongoing mentor. Natalie Kim had changed little in the past 3 years, though her restaurant empire had expanded to 3 locations. She'd been supportive when Olivia had made the difficult decision to leave Terroir 18 months ago to work full-time on developing the Bridge program, recognizing that Olivia's talents and passion had evolved beyond restaurant management. "Look at you," Natalie said, holding Olivia at arm's length. "Executive Director suits you." "I'm still getting used to the title," Olivia admitted. "Titles don't matter," Natalie said dismissively. "Impact does, and what you're launching today will have impact for generations." She glanced at her watch. "I should find my seat. Just wanted to say I'm proud of you, not because of where you ended up, but because of how fiercely you fought to get here on your own terms." As Natalie departed, Maya approached again, tablet in hand. 2 minutes, Olivia. You'll be introduced after the opening video. Daniel will go first to explain Horizon's commitment, then he'll introduce you." Remember, Daniel said quietly, as they took their positions behind the stage, this is your vision too. You've earned this moment. The lights dimmed in the conference center as Maya cued the video, a powerful 3-minute introduction to the Bridge program's mission and impact, featuring testimonials from early participants whose lives had been transformed not by charity, but by strategic support that honored their agency and dignity. As the video concluded and Daniel moved to the podium to enthusiastic applause, Olivia watched him with a blend of professional admiration and personal affection. He'd become more than her partner in life. He was her ally in creating meaningful change, using his privilege and platform not to rescue people, but to remove structural barriers that prevented them from rescuing themselves. 3 years ago, Daniel began, his voice carrying clearly through the room, a chance encounter in an Uber changed my understanding of what effective support really means. Not handouts that create dependency, not temporary fixes that ignore systemic issues, but authentic connection that recognizes and amplifies the inherent capabilities people already possess. He outlined Horizon's financial and technological commitment to the Bridge program, the millions in funding, the custom software developed to connect participants with resources, the partnerships forged with employers, educational institutions, and housing providers. What had begun as a small pilot had expanded into a comprehensive ecosystem of support designed to be both scalable and adaptable to different communities' needs. But the heart of this program, Daniel continued, isn't the technology or the funding. It's the recognition that the most qualified experts on overcoming barriers are the people who have faced them firsthand. That's why I'm proud to introduce the Bridge program's executive director, a woman whose insight, determination, and unwavering commitment to empowering others has transformed a good idea into a revolutionary approach. Please welcome Olivia Reyes. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.